just months after the Al-Aqsa flood operation began on October 7, 2023, in solidarity with Palestine and their resistance, Yemen, which is led by the popular Ansar Allah revolutionary government, and also their military wing is called the Yemeni Armed Forces. They enacted a blockade of the Red Sea for any vessels that are heading towards the Zionist entity, aka Israel, and showed material solidarity by, targeting ships that were aiding the genocide. And I think there was a misunderstanding that all ships were blockaded, and that's not the case. Chinese and Russian ships were allowed to pass. So the chapter just explains why that is. And in the chapter, I talk a little bit about the historical friendship between Yemen and China. So when after the revolution, Yemen was actually the first nation in the Arab Peninsula to recognize China, and their relationship goes that was in 1956, and their relationship begins. It's like it was always mutually beneficial, and a relationship based on cooperation, respecting the internal debates and processes of each other's countries. So I just talk a little bit about everything that China has built in Yemen. So they built the Sana'a Hodeidah Highway, which is like the main artery in Yemen that essentially is where all the trade flows through. Talked a little bit about Huawei and the various different Chinese corporations that have, or Chinese entities, I should say, that have entered into joint ventures with local companies in Yemen on a partnership basis to help them develop telecom, to develop natural gas access, port expansions. Then I talk a little bit about China's role in brokering peace. So China brokered a Saudi-Iran reconciliation in 2023, which reduced pressure on Yemen because, as we know, Yemen was undergoing its own genocide that was funded by the UAE, the UK, and the US. So China's role in brokering reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran led to the end of that chapter in the genocide against Yemen. And I guess what are the main takeaways that I hope that folks get when they read this chapter is that China's foreign policy is non-interventionist. They respect the sovereignty of other nations. They don't impose political outcomes. They never have. I always tell people, everybody who thinks China is going to impose a certain outcome on another country, please tell me when they have ever said that was their goal or their plan. They've never said that. So they're non-interventionist. They are respecting the sovereignty of other nations. All of the agreements that they enter are mutually beneficial. They're not extractive or exploitative in nature like the West. They practice pragmatic diplomacy, meaning they really do talk to all sides. They do. That's just been their foreign policy. If there's a conflict, they're not going to choose a side. They're going to talk to both sides and try to get both sides to reach an agreement or a resolution. That's their foreign policy. So Yemen is another example of that, because Yemen is essentially divided, unfortunately, because of U.S. Western imperialism. You have the Ansar Allah led government, which controls the western part of Yemen, and then you have the U.S.-backed Supreme Political Council, which controls the eastern part of Yemen. So, China has relationships with both. And yes, I would love for China to go all in supporting Ansar Allah, but that's just not the reality of how their politics operate. They really, want the reunification of Yemen to happen under a Yemeni-led process, and that means talking to both sides. As many have said on this panel already, China helps nations develop as a peace strategy. When nations are able to take control of their own natural resources and manufacture them into finished products, and that helps them build up their economy, which reduces dependence on the West and allows countries to break free from U.S. imperial control. I think that's basically it. China treats global South nations as equals, not subordinates like the United States and the West does. Their development, they don't see development as charity and the work that they do in other countries as charity, but they see it as shared growth and stability. If a country is developed, it's going to be more stable, and that leads to peace. I know it sounds like crazy, but China always talks about peace. They're always saying, we want peace here, we want peace there. What's our role gonna be? Well, we're gonna help a country develop, so that with development comes peace. That's about it. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that I wrote this one part that I'll read out loud. I said, China's relationship with Yemen isn't an isolated case. It illustrates a model of global relations built on respect, development, and win-win cooperation. In a world marked by U.S. war, sanctions, and intervention, China shows another possibility, one where nations can rise together, trade freely, and pursue peace without domination. For many, that is why China is a genuine source of hope for the future. That's all. Thank you.